time you enjoy wasting is not time wasted. Marth Trolley Curtin. Bending Not Breaking. Season 7, Episode 1. After all these years. And welcome back to another episode of Bending Not Breaking. I'm Sunshine.
And I'm Ben.
And we are talking Season 4, Book 4? Season 4 of The Legend of Korra. The final season.
Balance.
The final one.
The final one. It's unbelievable to me that we've talked about all of these moments of Korra. And, you know, what's really interesting to me is I'm really glad after kind of binging this season and coming back to this episode that we have our history of doing in this, you know, with 6 other seasons, because this season has so much depth to it that I'm not sure if we tackled this first, we would do it justice.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yes, because I was not skilled. I still don't know everything. Very much so. Very much don't know. After all the learning that has taken place over the last
after all these years,
4 or 5 years of us doing this show, I am still so scared to tackle some of these subjects and make sure that we're doing them with respect and honor and the really the due diligence they deserve. And so because of that, we will be bringing back several of the experts that we've had over the course of the last 7 seasons or 6 seasons, some fan favorites, and maybe some new ones. And so we're really jazzed about doing that. And having those people back for us. But to start the season, we're taking it back to the very beginning. It's just me and you. It's me and you, buddy. Right. We're talking this, and we are talking after all these years through the lens of time. Through the lens of time. And so, what is time, Ben? Or would you like me to pull that answer together?
I think you prepared an answer for that.
I've got things. Time, the several definitions, and I like in my head the one that comes to, you know, the normal one is the indefinite continued progress of existence and events in the past, present, and future regarding as a whole, right? Time, space, and time. Of course, there are way more definitions. It's just in my head when watching the show, that was kind of where I was at. However, a point of time is also time, right? Like a point of time that is measured in hours and minutes, right? It's 9:15. That's a time. And then also to like plan or schedule or arrange something that should happen or be done, right? Timing. We're timing this out. This is going to happen at 9. This is going to happen at 9:30, so on and so forth. And then the measure the time taken, or the measure the time taken by a process or activity. So like I'm timing you. Right, you're gonna do this test. I'm timing you to how long it takes. And so there's a lot of different variations of what time kind of looks like and how to interpret time and what that really means. And so we get to talk about those things because we get, as most of the time it happens, we get kind of the gambit of definitions inside of this episode when it comes to this lens.
Yeah, there's a lot of philosophical conversation around time too, and thinking about whether time is just a figment, like a construct that we have created that isn't actually real. A lot of theorists, and I say a lot, but I don't actually know how many. But there are theorists that would say that there is no future, there is no past, there is only the present, and what we perceive to be present or what we perceive to be future and past is really just inside our head, right? And that actual past doesn't exist, right? And the actual future doesn't exist. But what our brain tells us is that they do. And so we have this idea of future storytelling, that we tell ourselves a story about what's going to happen, what might happen in the future. And we remember, sometimes falsely, what happened in the past. And both of those things drastically influence our present. So yeah, there's a lot of questions around the validity of time and like what it really means, but we don't have time to go into all of that.
No, because you just opened up a whole can of worms because like people can experience the present differently in the same moment in time can be experienced differently by the people who are in that exact same space.
Yeah.
And so how we remember what that looks like, what time looks like, is I, I don't know. I'm not a quantum physicist. Who knows about time? It does not me, but we're going to try to talk a little bit about it in terms of Avatar, uh, The Legend of Korra, season 4, episode 1, after all these years. And so for that to happen, Ben, I'm going to give you
We need
30
to measure
seconds.
some time.
I'm going to give you 30 seconds on the clock. Um, and so it's time for you to recap this episode. Are you ready?
I Yes.
All right. On your mark, get set, go.
All right, so 3 years have passed since Zahir and the Red Lotus went AWOL and did things, and the Republic City is like, ooh, let's have like spirit tours, and so they're like, cool spirits, and then Future Industries is like super cool and doing well, and Prince Wu is a thing, and he's like taking over the throne, and he's kind of like, ugh.
15 seconds.
And then Kuvira is like stopping the bandits, and then there are bandits, and she's like, "You be loyal to me, or else you're gonna die." And then the governor's like, "I can't submit to you because if I do, then I'm gonna lose everything, and you're just evil." And then where's Korra?
Three,
And Opal
two,
and Kai are super cool.
1, 0. Opal and Kai are super cool.
I did my best.
It's a good episode. It's a good episode to jump into this season with so little Korra, and I think that's you're not expecting that, right? Where's the main character
Yeah.
throughout the entirety? But it's really nice to be able to catch up with each of these individual threads that we've really grown to love over the past seasons, and so
And to
the
see how
first,
they over time have like split up, right?
no,
The cohesion that we had for the first 3 seasons for a lot of these groups is not there, and they ended up going their separate ways, which is really interesting to think about what happens over time without, a glue, and with Korra being the glue in this case.
yeah, it's the first amount of time that we know about is that there has been a 3 years. 3 years have passed
Yep.
since the events of the Red Lotus. 3 years have passed since Korra has been poisoned. Since Janora has gotten her master tattoo. Since all of this has happened, 3 years have passed, and there seems to be like a lot of happiness. Right, the city seems to
Yeah.
be doing well. Republic City seems to be doing well. They're making changes. They're feeling good. Um, and here we are realizing there's a whole bunch of tension because new things are happening, new issues are bubbling up. But the passage of time is always interesting, especially when it comes to relationships and how they mend. Seeing people that are siblings together 3 years ago with mom, there's been a betrayal. What is that betrayal? What does it
Yeah.
look like? What does that mean? What has Kuvira been doing? We liked Kuvira in season 3.
Yeah.
Uh, we don't know if we dislike her until maybe not even at the end of this episode, but certainly there are moments for me where I'm like, no, don't love that.
Oh yeah. I'm definitely like super, super worried of just from this episode. Um yeah, like I think one of the things you mentioned was really interesting to me was that everything seems happy and like good, and everybody's like vibing a little bit.
Yeah.
And what I find really kind of worrisome about that is I imagine that like the world at large is predominantly the Earth Kingdom, since that's where we're focused, is most of people are probably like, this feels fine, especially in Republic City.
Mm-hmm.
And everything's fine and dandy. I don't need anything else. Everything's working. When really there's a lot of distress and disturbance in the various states within the Earth Kingdom, where bandits are being overrun due to the lack of leadership from losing the Earth Queen, whether that was good or bad leadership, but lack
Yeah.
of leadership, and things are kind of being like tossed up in the air. And to the outsider who's like just chilling and observing from like Cuvier is going around and like making things better and everything's like super fine and cool. But unless you're there and hearing it on the ground, you miss things. And I wonder um how time can desensitize us perhaps to the goings on of things that aren't in our purview, right? That aren't in our, observable jurisdiction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I list is time used as a weapon. That was one of the questions that I wrote down, and
Interesting.
part of that was the concept of, can we hold out longer than
Mm,
these others? Can we afford the resource of time more than these other people? Do we have enough privilege to be able to do that? Right. And so the ability for Kuvira's army to say, we're going to go sit and wait for your answer.
yeah.
And we really don't know if Kuvira is potentially sending these bandits or letting the bandits through completely untouched, because she's like, you know, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't want to, I'm going to show you, right? And there's nothing that says she doesn't send this person to steal those resources that the airbenders are picking up
Hmm.
as a way of saying, like, hey, we're going to, we're going to do this to take your resources so you don't have time, because if you don't have the things you need to survive, your time is limited.
Yeah.
And so using time as a weapon in that sense. And I wonder if that same concept goes to that. I think you were talking more about it to maybe like becoming jaded or becoming, but in the same sense of, I'm more likely to go along with this person that may cause harm, or this thing that may cause harm, because one, I've been dealing with this, what I view as more harmful for longer, that I'm willing to take the halfway harm, or what may feel like the halfway harm at the time.
Yeah.
Um, because I have been experiencing this for so much longer, and become jaded to that process of like, all right, cool.
It's that, and I think the piece that I'm kind of thinking about is like the war between Russia and Ukraine. And, I am largely unaffected by that. And
100%.
and it's been
It's been
going
going
on
on for over a year.
for over a year now. And if I am not constantly looking into this, researching it, learning more, and trying to understand it, then I could go days, weeks, months without thinking about it, knowing that it's going
100%.
on and thinking that like, oh, it's not a problem. It's okay. It'll be fine. Right. Because I have not been paying attention. And, it is time mixed with, I don't want to call it apathy, but like it's not that I don't care, right? It's that I have things that I'm focused on, and I'm, stressed in school, and I have the privilege of not having to worry about it, right? And when I think that's one of the things that makes me nervous when it comes to like having and voting on things where do we offer aid to other countries? And this is just one example, but when Ryko is put in a position of, okay, do we start to intervene? He's like, I don't know about that. And that happened multiple times in previous seasons too, where like, nope, Republic City is going to stay out of this because we have the privilege to, and
Because we have a privilege. There's a privilege to being able to afford time, right? To be able to
yeah,
have time. I think about that a lot when it comes to the privilege of time when it comes to taking care of your family, right? Like, we know that things like reading to your kids at night and
yeah,
spending time with
yeah,
them can affect their social emotional learning, and your ability to help them navigate and spend time with them, and to go do stuff with the ones you love. That's a privilege and a resource that
yeah,
some people don't have, and it's not because they don't want to do it. It's because to be able to provide one source of security for you, I've
mhm,
got to spend almost 100% of my time on that, right? And
yeah.
so that ends up becoming a privilege in itself as well. It's a privilege to have time to do things.
Yeah, you're reminding me of something I've talked about at some point before on this podcast, but Melinda Gates wrote a book called The Power of Lift. And in this book, she talked about the importance of unpaid work, specifically thinking about it in framework of time, of how long it takes to do certain things. And, talking about how in countries or areas where there is no water, clean water, the time it takes to go get that water, return, is hours of your time. And we can even use a local example of Flint, Michigan, right? Had really struggled with water. And there were examples of people who got in line to get bottles of water, cases of water, and they got at line at 5:30 in the morning. They didn't get out until afternoon. And so they spent hours in line just to have fresh water that they couldn't spend working, that they couldn't spend doing other things. And so it's exponential when you layer it onto what it could have been, especially in developing countries where that time could have been used in education to learn to read, right? And that will then turn into later compounding benefits in the workforce. And the power of taking away that time spent on unpaid work makes a massive difference. And I think that is speaking to privilege too. Like when you have the privilege of being able to afford water, and when you have the privilege of being able to afford a Roomba to do your vacuuming instead of having to do it yourself, there's so much time that you get back that compounds into something else that I think we miss when we compare without that framework.
And we hear that in the governor at the end, right?
Yes.
When Kai says, "You," I think you made, for the record, I think you made the right decision, or for what it's worth, I think you made the right decision. And he really turned back and said, "Did I even have a choice? Like, was that even a thing that I had? I didn't have time. I didn't have
Yeah.
the ability to do that." And I think, and he's, you see it in every interaction he has with Kavira. It's not the right choice. I'm being held hostage by this time constraint. And I don't think it's good for my people. And though it might not be good in the long run or even immediately, it's still better than them dying of starvation, is the
Yeah.
thought process. Who someone in that village might say that's up for debate. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
absolutely.
um, so it's we do time as a resource, time used as bait for hostage situation. I don't love that. Right? It's good to acknowledge that it is a resource, but seeing it used by Kuvira uh, to really pull her way is not great. And I think over the course of the season, already in this episode, we're seeing Kuvira does not lead through community. Kuvira does not lead through even uniting folks. Like her version of uniting is not true uniting, right? It's not
Yeah,
her bringing people together in community and conversation to figure out solutions to problems together. It's I have the right solution. I have the right
yeah.
decision.
My
I
way
have the right
or the
choice, and
highway.
you're joining on with me. And I think people that is the big difference between um that's that's fascism, right? Like
Yeah,
that's what that is
precisely.
in a nutshell. Um, and so her believing in herself that she's this uniter, um, whether she truly believes that or not. So let's give the benefit of the doubt and say Kuvira does believe that that's the case.
Hmm.
She is actively not leading through community or leading based off of the needs of other people. Because it's one thing to say, "How I'm going to bring food to you, then I'm going to offer you protection, and
Yeah,
then you still get to dictate like how you use that food and what your environment looks like." Because I'm not living here, you are.
yeah.
Um, she's not doing that. It's she's dropping flags and she's saying it's my way or the highway, right? Same with what is arguably the most awesome fight sequence this episode, but just a really cool one is her taking on all the bandits as they're coming down the hill.
I loved watching her bend in that scene. She is demonstrating a type and skill with bending that we have yet to be. This is new.
It's because earthbending's already been super kind of rigid and like
Yeah,
chunky. And
this is
she
like
is just
speed boxing.
flinging it, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
she is. It's exactly that, right? It's a boxer with speed as opposed to like
yeah.
a heavy hitter who's waiting back to throw that one heavy punch. She is just quick.
Well, it's also I think finesse, right? She's metal bending these small pieces of metal where previously, like where I think of Boomy, who like lifts this giant boulder trying to take on Aang, and even Toph, it's like it's these always these big rocks. And what we're seeing here is this finesse of fine-tuned, really controlled bending of small things. And we the only other time I can really think of that is in the Kiyoshi novels, right? Where it takes a lot of precision to bend small pebbles, and not every bender has the capacity to do that. And so it's really interesting. The control required is just fascinating, and watching it was just it's a masterclass on really cool bending.
Yeah, and so she's it's a wonderfully animated and just like you're seeing things we've never seen before. It's so
Yeah,
quick, so agile, and we get this moment where you they do a really good job of humanizing these bandits that are coming to attack this train. Um, it's families. It's not these rough and tough, like
yeah,
rugged, like criminals that you expect to see from a train robbery scene in a western. It's moms and dads.
yeah,
It's people out there just trying to survive. And so there's a good chance that her policies that she's enacted over the last 3 years are causing the struggle, forcing people into this. And then she's using that as a way of like, you're lost.
yeah.
Your only options are to die here or join me. And again, what's the choice? Because it's the time that it takes for a train to get here and run you over, or it's come with me and join my army.
Well,
And
and
so
then
we're seeing that time is the constraint, right? How long can I wait out here without resources? How long can I wait out here without food? All
yeah,
right, I'm going to join this military industrial complex because that's my only chance of survival. I don't have the time to
yeah.
not do it.
And it makes me, it makes me question and think about Bolin, because Bolin has had the time, right? And so what's the difference here
The
to
time and the
me?
resources after all the nut tuck stuff.
Yeah. And so for me, it feels like Bolin, especially at the beginning of the season, really feels like he is doing the right thing. And I think that has to do with the story that Kuvira is letting him see versus the story that she is delivering. And so what we see at the end with the bandits is they are expressing gratitude. Thank you, great uniter. And so I imagine the things that Bolin sees are the end result, where it's like, thank you, great uniter, because they know if they say anything else, they're going to get thrown on the train tracks. And it's the same deal with the governor and with these other areas. Like he sees that we get to hand out food, we get to give them, look at what we're doing for them, and he doesn't see the manipulative times which when she is saying it's me or you die, right?
One of the things that I said when watching this episode was um, the right place and time, like the right time to do things. The
Yeah,
example of Kuvira knowing that it's the right time to be diplomatic and kind, and oh, you didn't know we were engaged, and it's so good to see you, Opal, and oh, my favorite couple. Hey, Governor, I need to talk to you privately. And then knowing that that's a different time where she gets to engage differently, she's got a real strong political awareness of when the right time is to interject what she wants to do and who she wants to be. Compare that to our new prince, Prince Wu. Terrible time to hit on Asami, bud. Like no timing, no awareness, right? Like
yeah,
absolutely does not know how to behave in those situations. And we see that that is the kind of the catalyst for this season of Kubira being like Prince Wu is not ready. He
yeah,
cannot, and she's not wrong. Prince
yeah,
Wu cannot lead and is not ready.
yeah,
Prince Wu is not good at these things.
yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's so much going on that's hard to see unless you're there. And so it just begs the question, how when time is elapsing and you don't have all the facts about how what's going on, it seems like we need to do a better job of reserving judgment rather than making judgment based off what we know. Um, and I hesitate to say that because I don't want people to like stay in limbo or not make important decisions. But I also am like, you really need more information, right? Like, I don't know. There's just it's it's awkward. Um,
There's a whole lot there.
yeah. So Kim, there was a conversation that was between Opal and Kai that I thought was really fascinating.
Ooh,
Uh,
let's talk about it.
yeah, there. So on Lefty, the bison, um, the they are just like talking to each other about what's how they've been doing and what's new. And so I'm getting the vibes that they haven't been paired like this for a while. This seems like a new situation for them where this is their new assignment, so to speak. And they're like, "Oh, well, tell me about you and Bolin." And then Opal's like, "Well, here's the sitch." And then, like you and Janora. And then Kai is like, "Oh, we're doing great." And it's this interesting the idea of what we are curious about in other people when time has passed is an interesting question for me. And so what we see is that who the people that are important to you, I want to learn about them, right? And how are you doing as a pair? It seems that uh I don't know that I have an observation other than that just seems really interesting to me around what the focus was after a time had passed. Does that like how does that resonate for you?
Headline that one more time for me.
Yeah, so over time,
Mm-hmm.
when we are not with people, and then we
Mm-hmm.
come back into a space where we get to hang out and see old friends or old acquaintances, and what we ask about in this case were the connections that we had with others. So Kai asked about Opal and Bolin, and then
Mm-hmm.
vice versa, asked about Kai and Janora, and asked about the relationship. And I'm curious about why that was the conversation and not something else.
It's I think there's multiple ways. I think sometimes we connect with people just by giving them the opportunity to share about their lives, right? Like that's something that certainly happens. Hey, how are things with you and your partner, right? Like I'm wanting to know more about learn about you and your experiences over the last, and that's a way to connect, right? It's a I'm listening to you, I'm allowing you to talk. It's a good chance to connect that way. So I think that's part of it. Finding those commonalities of like, oh, I went through something similar, right? Here's what I went through, and I think it opens up the door for connection when you do those things. So you're just wanting to hear about the people that you know, right? Like Kai stole from Bolin.
Yeah, they have a history.
They have a history. Um, but one that ended in such beautiful terms, right? Or not even ended, but one that the last time we saw them together really is this relationship that's kind of blossoming, and there was a care there. And Bolin, with all of his flaws, one of them was never giving grace or giving kind of having that hopeful nature with Kai. And so I think there's probably a little bit of like, oh, tell me about Bolin. How's Bolin?
Yeah.
And it's also because he's curious to learn these things as well. And so, I think it's very common to what we do in those situations. I haven't seen you in 10 years. Tell me about what's going on and all the people in your life. Um, and it's a way of connecting.
Yeah, and I think that was what was interesting for me was it wasn't what's going on in your life. It was tell me not about you, but about the people you're in relationship with. And, I find that really interesting, right? Because, you
Well, because
know,
I can feel it
go ahead.
context, right? Context and intention is important. As much as we say it's like intent doesn't matter, and sometimes intention does. And if the person feels like your intent is, I'm asking about you and the people in your life, and I want to know more about you, that feels good. If it's, hey, tell me about this other person, let's talk about them the entire time, it's like, well, that doesn't feel as good. And so that intent, I think, that really does matter, and it matters how Opal perceived those conversations in the moment. So
Yeah.
for us, I think there's validity to asking about you to explain what's going on in your life and the relationships that you have, because again, it opens up the door for stronger similarities of connection.
Yeah.
Um, it also shows, hey, I'm interested in you and caring about you, and part of you is your relationships and how you're feeling and what's going on. If I'm clearly just trying to gossip or talk about another person,
Well,
that's never going to feel as genuine.
I think what it tells me about their lives is that, their lives are more communal in nature than one might like in especially in, the very rugged individualist United States might say, right? And I think um, you know, to be isolated is one thing, but one of the things I really find beautiful about that was I learned more about you by asking who you're connected to and how they are doing rather than by just asking about you as an individual. So
Yeah.
by learning about like when time has elapsed, the things that happen over that time is it's not me individually that is really doing the change. It's the connections and the pieces and the things that I am connected to change, right? And that changes me. And so I think that's where I was like drawn, why I was drawn to this was that time changes who and how we're connected to others. And I think that's what makes us who we are, right? And I think that's really fascinating and kind of just illustrated in this conversation between Kai and Opal.
I love that time can change how we are connected to others. And I think that's the reality for so many, not for good or for bad. Time changes the way that our level of connection and changes how we're connected for good and for bad, right?
Yeah.
Investing into that time is gonna shift that. And so, but it is time is just it's weird, man. It's
Yep.
just um this space of distance that is not necessarily one of physical nature, but just in the amount of time that you spent with someone, um, proximity. And there's a time plays a role in that. We've discussed Click before. This
Yep.
book that is centered around what breeds connection.
Yep.
And some of that is similarities, right? Doesn't matter the level of similarity or the importance of the similarity, but similarity is a part of that.
Quantity.
Proximity is another part of that.
Yep.
Yeah. And proximity is just how close you are with someone. But really, in that book, they are talking time spent with that person,
Yep.
not just physical space. Physical space is important. You think about you work with your office mates and they're physically next to you.
Yeah.
But when they are talking about proximity in that book, it is not just someone's you being next to someone on the subway
Yeah. It's
is not
proximity over
enough.
time.
It's proximity over time.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's really so you have to be not just close in space, but that quality time has to be there as well, and that's part of it. And
Yeah.
so, which I never, I in my head, of course that makes sense, but at the
Yeah.
time I was just I'm next to them every day, but it's really the time that makes that change possible.
Yeah.
Speaking about time away, let's talk about Korra.
That's where I wanted to go next.
What a fun little segue for Korra as we talk about this episode. Not fun at all, actually. She's not having fun.
She's getting her
She's
butt
having
kicked.
zero fun.
Yeah.
Tonrock gets to Republic City. Korra left 6 months ago. She's been sending me letters saying she's here,
Yep.
which I think is she somewhere in the Earth? We don't know where she's at currently.
Yeah, I
She
think it's we
seems
presume
somewhere
somewhere
in the
in the
Earth
Earth
Kingdom,
Kingdom. Yeah.
but there's no. It could be she is actually in Republic City. She's just in
Exactly.
the underground, right? So,
Yeah.
and she's underground fighting,
Yeah.
to survive.
And
I
is
view
not,
that as,
I
and
was
it's
gonna say,
not good.
well, is also just not living as the Avatar, right? Is undercover,
Yeah,
so to speak. Cut her hair, changed outfits, so is wearing Earth King attire instead of Water Tribe, donned. So it's just kind of keeping her identity a secret and living in this like state of being pummeled by rocks repeatedly.
Yeah,
And
and we don't get the sense that she is high, like she's being bad on purpose. We don't get that. I didn't get. I don't get that sense. I don't view it as she just needs money, and this is a good way for her to get money, and she's gonna like not fight as hard because she's the Avatar, so that people don't know who she is. I'm getting the sense she's just not. She is currently not that great at fighting. Something is distracting her.
yeah,
Is the vibe that I'm picking up. Um, it feels like she is running away from past. She's running away from the actions, the involvement, the things that happened to her 3 years ago. It feels as if she is trying to distance herself from that past event as much as possible.
yeah, and
She's rumbling. She's just not rumbling with the right thing.
well, and I think we're going to get a lot more insight into Korra next episode, and I hesitate to really dive into it now because there's just so much that is going on next episode that helps us kind of understand her mindset. But but yeah, like I think what we know is that Korra just recently experienced an incredibly uh, physical trauma in addition to the mental trauma as a result of that. And of course, she is trying to process and she's trying to do it in her own way. And right now, it seems like she's putting herself in troubling situations for some reason in order to cope with something that she's going through, um, which is what we do. That is what happens. And especially when we isolate ourselves from the people who probably would be able to help us the most. Scary.
Oof. Yeah, and it is scary. I mean, it is scary. We're gonna see what her life looks like after this. There's been so much trauma from season one to season two to season three,
Yep.
um, and it's we're gonna see it all play out in season four.
Yeah, we are. We're going to see it all. Well, great.
Um, so what are some takeaways we've talked about so far? So one of my favorites that we just touched on, um, time spent with others allows us to strengthen relationships. Simple takeaway.
Yeah.
One that we probably could all have pinpointed, of course, right? But when you really think about it, like it's not just being in the same space as someone; it's that time, intentional time spent with them.
Yeah, it's what we, and I think it's, again, it's not just time either. It's not just time. It's not just proximity. It is the
Proximity over
intentional.
time.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
what we do with that proximity over time, right? Because that can just as easily weaken as much as it strengthens, depending on how we're spending that time.
absolutely. And then time used as a weapon or as a hostage, right? So, have you
Yeah.
ever seen that used in like a work form for you? Have you ever had that done to you, or have you ever unintentionally or intentionally kind of used time in that way? Um,
I think this perhaps a more benign way to consider this is like when working with children, honestly, is saying, hey, uh, we need to do this. We need to do whatever we need to move from A to B. And I can't do that until you all are quiet. So every minute that you sit out, every minute that it takes now is going to take away from the dodgeball game that we're going to play next. So I'm going to wait, right? And I have the privilege of waiting because I don't need to play dodgeball, but you all like, and so I think sometimes we utilize that as a tool with children as well, and giving, offering that some sort of framing it as almost like a choice theory situation. You can sit here, or you can come with me, and I'm happy to do either. But the longer you wait, the less time you're going to have elsewhere. And the difference is, what is the difference between offering that as a natural consequence versus a consequence that I am putting on you, right? Which is, I think Kuvira is doing it in such a way that is way more problematic than that. Like, does that like I don't know the best way to parse that out.
Kavir is problematic.
Yeah, yeah. I think doing
it's
it with lives on the line
it's
is
so
one,
different
right. It's very different than it is.
because it's understanding and respecting, I think, the resource that time is, right? And so it's, are you using it specifically to like cause harm, or are
Yeah,
you doing it in a way because, like, as a collective, we've got to get this done, right? Like, as a
yeah,
collective, as a community, we've this is the time frame that we have. This is the realistic time frame that exists. Because I think, when I think about folks that I work with or friends, right? There's sometimes there's deadlines. There's sometimes
yep,
there are things that have to get done for us to do this thing. We're going to go on this beach trip. I need people to communicate with me their needs by X time for us to be able to support you in those needs, right? Like, fair. At this, in the same breath, understanding that time is a resource, and just because I have some at the moment doesn't mean that other people do, and
yes,
respecting that process as well. Whether it's with friends or family or work. But that's why it's like I need to communicate in such a time frame that allows for realistic goals, things to be met with the teams that I serve or in the people that I support. And at the same time, recognizing, like, oh, I've got free time. I'm going to do this task that also requires you to do X, Y, and Z. But just because I have free time and I have that available resource right now doesn't mean that you do. And the
yeah,
moment that I use that time as a resource or force a time frame on you that is unrealistic for my benefit, it becomes an issue.
yeah.
So,
And I think the things that really come down to like what makes this so like insidious with Kuvira is not only does she have all the power in this situation, right? But
yeah.
there are literal like lives on the line here. And the safety of people are on the line, the like basic needs versus when you are using this as uh, a tool to make help children make decisions. Nothing harmful is on the line in that example of
Yeah.
like, oh, you're just going to miss out on some dodgeball, right? It's I I do not want people to walk away thinking that like, this is a viable tool to use with things that help us be human, um, and be alive versus
Again, right? I think of, again, if you're providing, there's a time frame to things like that exists. Time exists in a time frame. You have to farm in a very specific way if you want to provide food to others,
yeah,
and you can't. There's sometimes where it's like you can't pull it out too early and you can't pull it out too late, right? Like you've got it. There's a time frame to it, and so that exists. And I think it's not an issue to recognize that those time frames exist and to work together for the betterment of others in that time frame, whatever it might be.
yeah,
So telling a kid, hey, you know, we've got to make this decision here and now. Would you like to do A, B, or C? But you got to make it in this time frame, or else I'm going to have to choose for you because we got to get in the car and go, whatever it might be.
yeah.
Um, but
I guess
again, we see,
that's the difference. That's what it is. It's to me, it's Kuvira is putting it is here's my imposed consequence or you die. Right? There
correct.
is there is
There's
no
no choice.
other option that is a viable option that, keeps everyone safe and alive. And so when you present it that way, that's the difference is right. You're offering multiple options that are going to say, hey, this is just the natural consequences of how things are going to break down versus here's my imposed consequence. It's that way or you die. that
Correct.
that really that helps me.
Yep. Anything else you want to tackle on this episode in regards to time or something that we want to lift up?
No, I'm grateful that we are able to kind of tap into what's coming because this episode really sets a beautiful foundation for what's coming. And it's very good. This is very good animation. It's very good writing. It's very good everything.
It is absolutely a great setup episode for the rest of the season. We're excited to be there. All right. Well, with that being said, let's take a quick break and then we will come back and do our pushes, our pulls, our devotions, and our gratitude. Hey, we'll be right back. And we are back from our little break. We're going to talk about Twee and Law, our pushes, our pulls, what pulls us in and what pushes us away. And so, Ben, what pulls you into this episode?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it, but I was really drawn to Kuvira's bending style, and just watching her take down these bandits was just a really cool scene for me. I have a lot of feelings about Kuvira, but like that was awesome. I really love that.
Yeah, that is such a great scene. It's one that I wrote down. The action in that sequence is, and we've said it for Korra in general. They just do a really good job of fight designing and choreographing these scenes, and so that's fantastic. For me, weirdly enough, it's the moment where Bolin is handing out stuff and feeling like he's doing
Mm,
good, and
yeah,
Opal looks at him, and you can see that there's a massive disconnect there. And the
yeah,
reason that scene pulls me in is one, it's so real, but two, it forces me to kind of look at what does it mean when I think I'm doing good,
yes,
and am I listening to others that say like, "Hey, you might not be."
yeah,
And I think that's an important thing for us to be willing to discuss and think about and reflect on, and that's a part of that. And so,
yeah,
um, I really do like that scene, as heartbreaking as it is, or poignant as it is, and it's because it acts as a reminder for me to say, when I think I'm doing good, when I think I'm joking or being playful or bringing joy into a situation, am I listening to those who say like, "Hey, that hurt,"
yeah.
or "That doesn't feel good"? And so, that's an important thing for me to reflect on and think on. And so I really enjoy that aspect of it. What pushes me away is Kuvira, is the quick turn, and quick for us, 3 years for her, but that quick turn of my way or the highway, and the things that she's willing to do to get that
Yeah.
is an issue. And so, I don't like her.
Yeah, well,
I
and
I don't like her.
I mean, I have to agree that the moment she is on the tracks, has all of these bandits like
That, that
kowtowing on the tracks, like in a sign of submission, and then she like they try to speak and she silences them, and like this, that it is super degrading, and then she threatens their lives, and it's like this is not the work of someone who is a benevolent leader, right? This
yeah,
is
not at all.
someone who is vying for control. And I like it's like cool, take down these bandits, and then you're like, oh, she not good. Like this is not okay. um so even if they're bandits, right, I just like it's yeah, I was definitely pushed away by her. Like, okay, like she's the villain. She's not who I yeah,
Yeah, they've set it up. She's the villain, and so
yeah.
that's where we're at.
And I gotta to shout out, like Zelda Williams nails this role. Like
Yeah,
so good.
so good. I agree. So good. Um, let's jump into our devotion,
Yeah.
our little practice,
We're talking about the element of
the
air.
element of air. And
We
so
finished last season with fire.
we
Fire.
did. So we're on air in the cycle. What do you want to do? What do you want to do this week? What's your plan?
Yeah, I was thinking about this and thinking about like over the court period of time, right? There is I was thinking about a thermostat and air conditioning, and uh, when you set the temperature to whatever it may be, what'll happen is depending on if it's on heat or if it's on air conditioning, it will heat up past or just to the temperature you've set it to, and then it will turn off automatically, right? And it's this idea of rest, right? Where I'm going to turn on, and once I hit where I need to be, I'm going to turn off. I'm going to turn on, I'm going to turn off. I'm going to heat the air, I'm going to cool the air, and then I'm going to pause and let it be. And I have
Yeah.
been wondering about my practices around, pushing and pulling, so to speak, the balance of air conditioning, my own life, and it's not been good. I have been out of practice with a lot of things that keep me in balance, and it's become harder and harder to tap into those things, like exercise, for instance. And I just the more rest I have, the less I'm interested in turning on. And so I have been really kind of grappling with that recently, and I would really like to exercise this week and really like make sure that I go out and do something at least once, and I think that will be a win for me.
That's a great goal. I Let me know how I can support you in that.
Thanks.
Um, the thought process that came to me goes back to understanding that time is a resource and that my timeline is not necessarily the timeline of others. And so part of that, it made me think of when you're filling things up with air mattress, tire, hot air balloon, like that happens at a time. And if you shut it off early, those things don't work as
Sure
you need
don't.
them to. And so there are certain things that even though I might want to get them done quickly, I might have the space and time to do it. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to get done in that time frame. And if I try to rush that time frame or rush other people in those things, um, then it won't work as well. The relationship won't work as well. The tire won't work as well. The air mattress will, be what it looks like at 3 a.m. in the morning after you filled it up, right? Like, and so I think my goal is to understand that that time frame looks different. The resource that people have of time is different for everyone. And so to really be cognizant of that as I am going through this upcoming week.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Wow. May we all have
yeah.
some sort of
Oh,
way to
wait.
do those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a part of that, one of the things that we've felt helpful throughout this process is to show gratitude. And so, who are we grateful for this episode? It doesn't have to be through the lens of time, but what is just a character that we are grateful for this episode?
Oh man, I am grateful for a lot in this episode. There's just so many, we get to see so many people, and I think that's what's so neat. But I think I'm gonna be really grateful for Asami. Um,
We all love Asami.
and I am grateful for Asami because, you know, Asami is the only person that Korra feels comfortable writing that is a part of her friend group. And we get some more insight into that next episode, but Asami has been there for Korra behind the scenes and is still, running an entire company at her age and doing all the things. And she's also grappling with feelings about her dad. There's just so much that she's going through. And then she has to deal with Prince Wu. And I'm just sitting here going like, buddy, like don't be that guy. And of course he is, but I'm grateful for, the fact that she's awesome and she shouldn't have had to deal with that.
Yeah, it turns out most people don't want to be hit on at a work event,
Turns out. Yep.
you know, or maybe even in a social event, or like at all.
Yeah. Read the room.
Read the room. I'm grateful for Opal. The growth that we've seen from her over the last 3 years, really in tune with the community she's trying to support and be helpful with, and the way that she treats Kai and saves Kai and tries to be a voice of reason for Bolin. And you just, there's a whole lot of growth there, and one that it's good to see. And I'm excited to see that expand over the course of this season. So Opal's a fantastic character who we gave a lot of gratitude to last season, but we're going to continue to do that. She's great. And so excited to see more
Here,
of
here.
of her. Well, one episode in the books, 12 episodes to go this season. We're excited for everyone to be along for the ride. If you would so like, we do live episodes monthly on our Patreon page. So jump over there, support us if you would like. Every little bit helps as we
Yeah.
support our producers and the people that help make this show happen. Jump over to B&B underscore pod on the socials, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. Follow us along there. You can also check out the ARK of E Network, who is our host of this podcast. They've been supporters for us for a long time. But they
Write
also
us
talk a
a
lot of
review.
they do a lot of movie and music content and stuff like that. And I will also be doing some more movie content for them. And so check out the arkofe.com as long as their social networks as well. And then anybody I'm missing, anything I'm forgetting about, Ben, any other tags you want to throw in
Thanking
there?
our listeners for being a part of this community and continuing to listen and share with your friends and write really lovely reviews. And, I'm grateful that you're a part of this, and shout out to our patrons for continuing to make this happen.
Yeah, the wonderful support that they've shown us over the years has been amazing. And we still got some more episodes to go. So I'm Sunshine.
I'm Ben.
And this has been Bending Not Breaking. Thank you for listening.